This tired heart beats on so that love can last. I climb out of hell just to wish you will. Fall at your feet, ready for my final sleep. Then the shadows stir deep down inside, but love shines through, nowhere it can hide. When I hear your voice and my blood runs fast, this tired heart beats on so that love can last. Feels like the darkness wins nearly every fight. Hold on to dreams until the morning light. So many demons to slay, I fear I cannot stay. With love's warming glow, it's back to war I go. When I hear your voice and my blood runs fast, this tired heart beats on so that love can last. We return to the start, when the night was all ours, making love look like art until we return to the stars. When I hear your voice and my blood runs fast, this tired heart beats on so that love can last. Even when I hear your name and my blood runs fast, this tired heart beats the same so that this love can last.
Hello. Oh, my thingy is not there. There we go. Welcome back to Dune Awakening. It's Spice Week this week, and our refiners haven't actually stopped since we first started. I kicked them off the day before yesterday evening. And we're going to try and keep them running a little bit. We're going to do a couple of sand crawls. I'm actually headed back to Hager Basin because we've done so much crawling, my tank is almost dead on the sand crawler. So we want a fresh one. Excuse me, having my morning coffee. And I'll probably pick up a new booster for the scout because it's looking rather deadish. What else? Oh, and then we're going to play the Bazaar later, which should be fun. So the Bazaar is a weird kind of auto battler card game. Deck building auto battler, I think is probably the best way to describe it. And it's a lot of fun. It has a mix of player encounters where you play their board state, as it was at the time, and then some static-ish NPCs. I haven't played in quite a long time, so we'll see how that goes. There was a channel called Retromation. Retro played a lot of Bazaar and got extremely good at it. I enjoyed watching his videos. I kind of missed them. Ooh, down ship. We're going to check this because there's 2 schematics we're still missing. Let's have a look. You're not going to eat that, are you? No, you're not. You're just patrolling to be a menace. He's a menace. Yes, yes, spice balloon. I understand. Hey, we got a smack. Not a great one, but it's still a schematic. I sure would take all these things. Getting a schematic out of those is extremely rare. Look at that. What's going on with the spice blooms? One there, there's one there. I've very much enjoyed our Alan Watts farming stream. And you know what? We may end up putting a little bit more of that on as well. Because that brought me joy. And that's kind of a big deal. Oh, yeah. Okay. Mark 6 should be made here, right? Yeah. Scout. Boosteroos. Give me some of those. And the spice tank's made here as well. What am I doing? I'm not even sure I have one uploaded, which is so sad. It makes me sad. Oh, we do. Great. Let's see. What else did I want? I wanted something from here. We'll take a handful of cobalt paste, because I know we were running out of that. Let me dump all of these first, including this. What else have I got that's got junk metal? Yeah, we don't need that. You could go and some documents. Manifests, that's right. And a little bit of cobalt paste. I think that's it. I mean, we could bring some fresh scout wings out, but honestly, I think they're probably going to last the week okay. Obviously, if we get shot at, I'll need to adjust accordingly. Let me see, how much durability got? Yeah, they are getting pretty close. It's really weird. The last, like, 10%-ish, maybe a little bit more, on any item seems to last forever. So we might not need this booster, but I'd rather have it and not need it, as the saying goes. Was there anything else? I'm sure there was something else I wanted from here and I just can't remember. Excuse me. Thinking. Nah. It's gone. Whatever it was, it can't have been that important. Let's just see who you are. Maybe we just sneak in a little side quest. Isn't this the guy that runs out of fuel all the time? Yeah. I'm sure you are. A good voice acting. Some of the voice acting in this game is really on point. So all credit to those voice actors. In fact, I would say the majority of the voice acting in this is like good to great. Some of the writing is less great, but yeah, generally it's kind of nice. And massive variety in voice actor accents, either extremely talented voice actors that can do lots of different accents or talent from all over the world, which is kind of nice. Got Russian, British, Scottish, like Persian, Egyptian. Don't think I noticed any German or French. Definitely something that's kind of sounded a bit like Spanish accent to me. But it's cool. I like it. So we'll just keep these boosters on us for now, and I'll try and remember to ditch them before we do any testing stations. And we'll actually take them right out into the deep desert and find where the large spice crater is. Now the question is, do we be optimistic and just check the one nearest us, which has been up the last sort of 2 times? Or do we be pessimistic and try the one furthest away from us? You know what? Let's start the day with a bit of optimism. Maybe, just maybe, it's out here again. If that's the case, this week's layout is very biased towards the east side, but we'll check it and find out. So I think what I'd like to do, we've got 5 hours left on each refiner, I believe. So I'd quite like to kind of double that. Which I think would be 2 sand crawls, perhaps. Oh, I should probably check to see if there's any, whoops, caves that we're kind of like flying over. C8. B6. Yeah, we can detour to C8. That's fine. Let me see what would we like out of that cave. We would like... Actually picked up a few more Kynes cut arrays, but I think that's probably the most useful thing for us. Oh, schematic blind. Yeah, we've only got 5 of those. I wouldn't say no to some Imperial still suit, boots, gloves, or helmet as well. Oh, I should put the music back on. Derp derp derp. Music. It was very nice listening to Alan Watts yesterday, though. I even went on and listened to quite a few of his lectures after the stream. I found myself chuckling along quite a lot, which is great. Like, I often find my life kind of devoid of, you know, true joyous laughter rather than kind of awkward laughter. Not awkward laughter, what am I thinking? Like socially prompted laughter. Like this, I said this thing and it's funny, and you kind of laughed to put them at ease. Which reminds me of another short which I saw recently, which has stuck with me, and it is just a guy going, "It's not your job to make other people feel comfortable," which I kind of sticks with me. I can be a bit of a people pleaser, and also current culture is very much like, don't offend, don't upset, which on a surface level is great. Like, you don't want to piss people off, you don't want to upset people. But on another level, that is a kindness that is extended, not a right. And whilst I think it's a good kindness, I also think people can overstep into that kind of realm. Am I in the right place? Maybe? I don't know. This doesn't look like a cave rock thingy. No, it's in fact not. So the cave is southeast of C8 quadrant. Oh, we went to C9. Ha ha. Derp. Think it's right here. It's too much yakking. Too much yakking, not enough checking my map. Thankfully, we're in the scout, so it doesn't take much to kind of get going. But it was nice listening to Mr. Watts. There was I really like, for a reason that I do not and possibly cannot know, who knows, um, conversations to do with the kind of esoteric and philosophical that don't really result in anything. Like, there's no, oh, well, I was this before and I'm this now afterwards, therefore it was a good thing to go through. This is not the cave we're looking for either. Maybe it's up here. And quite often contemplating things which on the surface seem completely contradictory and yet leave me feeling either more at peace or happier having listened to and contemplated them, which is very interesting. What were some of the things that stuck with me from last night's discourse? That, oh, this is not the cave we're looking for either. What was it? The sea doesn't have waves. The sea isn't waves, but the sea waves. Which I kind of like. C8, left-hand side. Can't be this. This is the wrong shape. Possibly here? Haven't had this much difficulty looking for a cave in a while. Yeah, I think this is the one. And the kind of idea that people kind of, you don't have, people say, oh, I am hungry, or I have hunger, is the translation in some languages. And you're not that, you're like more than that. And you don't have hunger. Hunger is like an appetite for something that you don't have, in fact. And it's kind of curious the way that our language develops. Well, that was going to be the right still suit then. In a way which we get so used to, and actually is wildly inaccurate. And there's something about using expressions and sayings because they are commonplace. And people, I know what you mean, but you're not saying what you mean at the same time. And I think that creates like a distance between what you say, what you mean, and what you feel. And I think if you can really say what you're feeling, then it's always going to have meaning. Like, it's always going to be honest and heartfelt. Like, the person hearing it will process it differently. Which, for someone that uses metaphors and similes all the time, is kind of ironic. But I think they have their place too. It's looking a little stormy. It's passing by. So we're going to check F9 and then I9, and then we'll scoot over to the other side if they're not up. Oh, thank goodness. I thought I left my spice tank with me. The spice tank is essentially the storage on the sandcrawler. So we need to be a little bit mindful about going out there with one that's about to break. But I think we can get at least one more, maybe two more sand crawls out of the current one. It is a bit awkward because you need to repair it on the sand, which not only takes a little bit of time, but also generates vibrations, which cause the worm. So it's looking like our I9 one is not up, but we'll see. Beep, 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 beep. But yeah, I may well put a little bit more Alan Watts on. In fact, to that end, let me bring up my YubTubs. Look at my history. History, yep, there we go. You all. Ah, we got somebody else sand crawling. Hello. We're going to talk to them in chat. Let me just see if this is workerizing. Audio. Yep. Hello. Yes, right. I'm no threat. I'm just letting you guys know I'm going to be bringing a sandcrawler out here as well. Hey, Hazen. Yeah, I'm going to go and grab my sandcrawler. So there'll be 2 of us on the field. I'm going to be on my own. So what I tend to do is I set like a 3-minute timer for myself. And then I lift off because I know the worm's coming at about 3.5 minutes. But I'll stay out of your way and I won't be any harm. I'll be back shortly. My base isn't too far. Just let them know. Hopefully they don't want to cause any bother. Although, you know, we are ready for bother. So we're probably going to be, we may have to adjust our timers a little bit. It's nice to see someone else out in the field, to be quite honest. They're also not super efficient at the old crawlerizing. Doing a forward back movement. Ah, wordages. So is that's F9 again? I think that's where we came from, right? Yeah, interesting. So I mean, I'm not complaining because it's the one closest to our base, but it is intriguing how often that's been the one. What I think I might do is just get Bazaar loading in the background just to see if it's patched. Hopefully we won't drop any frames while I do that. And what I will do, am I in the right account here? I am. Okay, so let's go. Yeah, update this. Add this to a playlist. Create a new one. We'll call it Philosophy. No, it can be public. That's fine. Save to playlist. Philosophy, save to playlist, philosophy, save to playlist, philosophy. Great. So now we've got a little playlist that we can do later, should we wish to. So yeah, who was that? That was Eisen. Eisen? I think AI can make a bit. Oh, this I'm headed to my PvP base. Dingus. Oh, I made this last night. I might as well show it off since we're like there. This is most definitely the largest pentashield I've ever put on a base. I've put some pretty large ones on. But we have a nice little place for the safe harbor for carriers, etc. Took 21, it's over 15,000 power. No, not 15,000, 1,500, 1,500 for these 3 pentashields alone. It's quite a monster. It does have one point of weakness, but honestly, all it is some pentashields and somewhere for people to rest out a storm, so it doesn't really matter if it gets taken down. I'm slightly disappointed that I went to the wrong place. Oh, Bazaar's already patched. Great. And you know what? I think we are going to do the Alan Watts thing again. Because I like it. If I go to YouTube... And then... Oh, I'm already signed in. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. Playlists. Philosophy. Let me take a look and see if I got copyright striked for anything we did yesterday. Or muted, etc. Not that I'd mind, because yesterday's VOD is kind of... It was just a bit of kind of self-care with listening to some browsing, wordage. Listening to some Alan Watts video producer. Whoops. I wasn't tabbed out, promise. It was totally tabbed out. Constructing the Spice Works, that had some muted audio. Oh, so it did have patches of muted audio. Let me just take a look how much of it got muterized. Actually, only one like little segment got muted. That's pretty good. Awesome. It didn't update the stream title, but that's fine. It seems like I use Stream Elements. Stream Elements says, oh, we've updated your stream title, and quite often it really hasn't. Stream Manager, let me make sure this one is, yeah, this one worked. Cool. Let's get in there. So yeah, bless our little Storm Rider module. It's, mind you, I think it's lasted, I was going to say multiple weeks, but we didn't use it last week because we did the challenge week. But I still think it's actually survived multiple weeks of quite high usage. And as I say, the last bit on things, I think it should wear uniformly. Like, that would make the most sense, but it's probably observer bias, but the last bit seems to work for ages. Yes, it like breaks frequently and you have to repair it, but it just keeps going and going and going. And I wonder whether that's because its durability loss is percentage based. So as the item gets lower, the amount of max durability it loses each time also gets lower. I don't know. Something that I could probably just do an experiment with and find out. Might be interesting to know. Right, do I have enough fuel? Probably not. I most definitely do not. So let's get some fuel. Let's bring the sand crawler out with its half-loaded textures. There we go. Yeah, this tank is not the best. But I think we can get one more harvest out of it. No point carrying these, this, or this. Ah, cobalt pasta. Fuel. Jesus, guys, you went through a lot of fuel. I mean, it's good. Like, turning fuel into spice is most definitely what we're about. But goddamn, oh, repair tool. It's okay, but we don't have any ammo. Yeah, I bet they used all the stuff in here too. Yeah, of course they did. Let's see. Sure, I asked this to do like a boatload. Yeah, there we go. Run. Is this, yeah, it's healed up enough. Oh, come back. Great. Away we go. I think what I'm going to do is, because I really did enjoy with more Alan Watts Bazaar later. So we'll definitely not be doing Mr. Watts whilst we're doing the Bazaar, but for now, let's do some Alan Watts. I really enjoyed it. And I kind of need to lean into things that I enjoy these days. So music off. Alan Watts on. Oh, I have the desktop audio muted because of Dingus Brain.
Have you ever noticed that the smarter you become, the lonelier you feel? It's a peculiar thing, isn't it? You'd think that intelligence would connect you to people, that seeing more, understanding more, would bring you closer to others. But it doesn't. Instead, it separates you. You walk into a room and everyone is laughing at something you don't find funny, talking about things that seem trivial, surface level, safe, and you smile, you nod, you play along, but inside you're somewhere else entirely. You're thinking about the conversation beneath the conversation, the patterns no one mentions, the questions no one's asking, and suddenly you realize you're alone. Not physically, but in every way that matters. This is the hidden cost of intelligence. The price nobody tells you about, the isolation that comes, not from being different, but from seeing differently. Let me tell you something about intelligent people, something that might explain why you feel the way you do. Intelligence isn't just about knowing more, it's about perceiving more, connecting dots that others don't see, following thoughts to their logical conclusions, even when those conclusions are uncomfortable. And here's the problem. Most people don't want to go there. They don't want to question the game. They want to play it. They don't want to examine the mask. They want to wear it. They don't want to wonder if the emperor has clothes. They want to complement the fabric. But you can't help it. You see the threads hanging loose. You notice the inconsistencies, the contradictions, the unspoken agreements everyone pretends are absolute truths. And when you point them out, even gently, even playfully, people get uncomfortable. Not because you're wrong, but because you're right. And being right about things people don't want to examine makes you dangerous. So they distance themselves. Not consciously, perhaps, not maliciously, but they do. They stop inviting you to things. They keep conversations shallow around you. They call you intense or overthinking or too serious. And you learn to keep your thoughts to yourself. You learn to dumb it down, to speak in half-truths, to laugh at jokes you don't find funny, to nod along with opinions you don't share. You learn to hide, because full honesty, you've discovered, is social suicide. Authentic expression is loneliness in motion. Being truly yourself means being truly alone. And so, intelligent people find themselves in this strange position, surrounded by others, but profoundly isolated, speaking, but never really heard, present, but not quite there. It's not that you think you're better than anyone. That's not it at all. In fact, you'd give anything to just fit in, to care about the things they care about, to find meaning in the conversations they have. But you can't. You've seen too much, thought too deeply, gone too far down the rabbit hole to come back and pretend the surface is all there is. This is what people don't understand about intelligence. It's not a gift you can put down. It's not a switch you can turn off. It's a lens you see through permanently. You can't unsee patterns once you've seen them. You can't unknow things once you know them. You can't go back to simple answers once you've understood the complexity. And most people, they're still living in the simple answers, the clean narratives, the comfortable illusions. They believe what they're told to believe. They want what they're told to want. They fear what they're told to fear, not because they're stupid, but because it's easier, safer, less lonely. But you can't do that anymore. And that's why you're alone. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This loneliness you feel, this isolation, it comes in stages. And understanding these stages might help you realize you're not broken. You're just awake in a sleeping world. The first stage is confusion. You're young, perhaps, or newly aware, and you start noticing things don't add up. The adults are saying one thing but doing another. Society claims to value truth but punishes honesty. People preach kindness but practice cruelty when no one's watching. And you think, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe everyone else understands something I don't. So you try harder. You study people. You observe. You analyze. You attempt to figure out the rules of the game everyone else seems to know instinctively. So you try harder. You study people. You observe. You analyze. You attempt to figure out the rules of the game everyone else seems to know instinctively. But the more you understand, the less it makes sense. The rules are arbitrary, the game is rigged, and everyone's pretending not to notice. That's when you enter the second stage, frustration. You try to explain what you see, you point out the contradictions, you ask the questions that expose the illusions, you speak the truths everyone's thinking but no one's saying, and you're met with resistance, denial, hostility, even. People tell you you're overthinking, being negative, ruining the mood, making things complicated, and you realize they don't want to know. They're not curious. They're not seeking truth. They're seeking comfort. And your intelligence, your honesty, your clarity, it threatens that comfort. So you stop sharing. You stop trying to connect. You retreat inward, which brings you to the third stage. Acceptance. You accept that most people will never understand you, that your thoughts are too complex, too nuanced, too uncomfortable for casual conversation, that your depth will always be mistaken for darkness, your silence for arrogance, your solitude for superiority. You accept that you will spend most of your life feeling alone, not because there's something wrong with you, but because there's something different about how you process the world. And strangely, this acceptance brings a kind of peace. Not happiness, perhaps, but peace. You stop expecting others to meet you where you are. You stop trying to translate yourself into simpler terms. You stop performing normalcy for an audience that will never applaud. You simply are alone, yes, but authentic, isolated, perhaps, but integrated, lonely, certainly, but no longer lying. And here's what's beautiful about this stage. This is where you start finding your people. Not many of them, not often, but occasionally you meet
nice
someone
one.
who
Thank
speaks
you.
your
This is going to be
language,
very helpful.
who
especially-
sees what you
don't
see,
come in the soul.
who doesn't
Come
need
in
you to
a scout.
explain, because they already
Yeah,
understand.
no, don't shoot
These
them,
connections
Julian.
are rare, but
No,
they're
no,
real.
no.
And one real connection
Please.
you discover is worth 1,000
'Cause
shallow ones.
it'll look like
This
I
is the
called in
paradox of
airport
intelligent
and
loneliness.
I already said
The
I
very
wouldn't hurt
thing
'em.
that isolates you from the masses connects you to the few who matter. But let me tell you something else about this loneliness, something that might shift how you see it entirely. What if the loneliness you feel isn't a bug, but a feature? What if your intelligence hasn't cursed you with isolation, but freed you from illusion? Think about it.
1 month.
Most
Okay.
people aren't connected. They're just clustered, huddled together for warmth, yes, but not truly seeing each other, not truly known. They're performing connection, playing the game of relationship, following the script of friendship, but beneath it all, they're just as alone as you are. They're just better at pretending they're not. You, on the other hand, you've stopped pretending. You've admitted the truth. You are alone. We all are, fundamentally. Born alone, die alone, and in between, we have these brief moments of recognition. these fleeting instances where another consciousness touches ours and we feel, for a moment, less singular. But intelligent people, they see this clearly. They don't need the illusion of constant connection to feel okay. They don't need the noise of endless socializing to drown out the silence of existence. They can sit with themselves, think with themselves, be with themselves, and find that it's enough. This is what people misunderstand about solitude. They think it's the absence of connection, but it's not. It's the
Looks like
presence
the
of
other
self.
river filled,
And for
which is
intelligent
great.
people, the self is endlessly interesting. You can
Start
spend
using the
hours in
timer
your
again.
own mind and never be bored, exploring ideas, following thoughts, building worlds of possibility, tearing them down, rebuilding them differently. Your intelligence gives you this gift, the ability to be alone without being lonely, to be in solitude without suffering. But society, it doesn't celebrate this. It pathologizes it. It calls you antisocial, isolated, depressed. It assumes something is wrong with you because you're not constantly seeking external validation and stimulation. But nothing is wrong with you. You're just operating on a different frequency. And yes, that frequency is less crowded. Yes, fewer people can hear it. But the ones who can, oh, the ones who can hear it truly hear you. Now, I want to address something important. The question you're probably asking yourself, is it worth it? Is intelligence worth the loneliness it brings? Would you trade your awareness for belonging, your clarity for comfort, your truth for togetherness? And here's what I'll tell you. You can't trade it. That's the thing. You can't unknow what you know. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't dumb yourself down permanently, no matter how hard you try. You can pretend, yes. You can perform. You can code switch and mask and play small. But inside, you'll still be you, still thinking those thoughts, still seeing those patterns, still aware, and that internal dishonesty, that self-betrayal, it's far lonelier than any external isolation. Because when you abandon yourself to fit in with others, you lose the only companion you're guaranteed to have for your entire life, yourself. So, no, you can't trade your intelligence for belonging. But you can change your relationship with it. You can stop seeing your intelligence as a curse. Stop framing your loneliness as punishment. Stop believing something is wrong with you because you don't fit into a world that was never designed for people who think like you. Instead, you can see it for what it is. A different way of being, a different experience of life. Not better, not worse, just different. And different, it's always lonely. Always has been, always will be. The artist is lonely in a world of bankers. The mystic is lonely in a world of materialists. The philosopher is lonely in a world of pragmatists. And the intelligent person, they're lonely in a world that values agreement over truth. But here's the secret. Here's what changes everything. That loneliness, that isolation you feel, it's not keeping you from life. It is life. It's the human condition, laid bare. It's existence without the comforting lies we tell ourselves. Most people spend their entire lives running from this loneliness, filling every moment with noise, with people, with distraction. Anything to avoid feeling it, anything to avoid facing it. But you can't run from it. Your intelligence won't let you. It strips away the distractions. It sees through the noise. It recognizes the loneliness as fundamental. And once you stop running from it, once you turn and face it directly, something remarkable happens. It transforms. The loneliness doesn't disappear, but it changes texture. It becomes less like a wound and more like a space. A vast, open space where you can finally breathe. Because when you're no longer afraid of being alone, you're no longer afraid of anything. When you're no longer desperate for connection, you're free to connect authentically. When you're no longer performing for acceptance, you're available for recognition. This is the gift hidden inside the curse, the freedom hidden inside the isolation, the strength hidden inside the loneliness. Intelligent people, when they embrace their solitude rather than resist it, they become dangerous in the most beautiful way. Dangerous to systems that rely on conformity. Dangerous to narratives that depend on unquestioning belief. Dangerous to illusions that require collective agreement, because they're no longer playing the game, they're no longer pretending, they're no longer available for manipulation through the fear of exclusion. They're alone, yes, but they're free, and that freedom, that sovereignty of self, it's threatening to a world built on dependency and herd mentality. So yes, intelligent people are always alone, but perhaps that's not the tragedy we think it is. Perhaps it's the very thing that allows them to see clearly, to think independently, to exist authentically. Perhaps the loneliness isn't what's wrong with them. Perhaps the loneliness is what's right. The world needs people who can stand alone, who can think for themselves, who can see through the collective delusions and speak uncomfortable truths. The world needs people who aren't so desperate for belonging that they'll believe anything, support anything, become anything, just to fit in. The world needs intelligent people, even if it doesn't always appreciate them, even if it doesn't always understand them, even if it leaves them feeling alone. So if you're one of these people, if you felt this loneliness, let me say this to you. You're not broken, you're not defective, you're not too much or too intense or too anything. You're awake in a sleeping world. And yes, that's lonely, but it's also necessary. It's also valuable. It's also exactly what you're meant to be. The loneliness you feel isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're doing something right. You're being true to yourself in a world that rewards falsehood. You're thinking for yourself in a world that demands conformity. You're standing alone in a world that insists on crowds. And maybe, just maybe, that's not a curse at all. Maybe it's the most profound gift you could ever receive. The gift of seeing truly, thinking clearly, being authentically, even if it means being alone, especially if it means being alone. Because in the end, the only person you need to understand you is you. And once you have that, once you accept that, once you embrace that, you're never really alone again. You're just free. You know, there's a very ancient idea that runs through almost every spiritual tradition, and that is the idea of the chosen one, the elect, the person who has been singled out by fate or by the divine for a particular destiny. And one of the most consistent characteristics of such individuals throughout history is their profound aloneness. Not loneliness, mind you, that's something quite different, but aloneness, solitude, a kind of apartness from the ordinary stream of human life. Now, I want to explore why this is so, because it touches on something very deep about the nature of spiritual awakening and the path of consciousness. And I want to be very clear from the start. When I speak of a chosen man, I'm not talking about someone who is better than others, or more deserving, or specially favored by some cosmic authority. That would be a completely egoistic interpretation. What I'm talking about is someone who has been chosen by life itself, by existence, by the universe, or however you want to put it, to wake up, to see through the game, to understand what most people never understand. And the question is, why must such a person walk alone? Why can't they have the companionship, the sense of belonging, the comfort of being part of the crowd that most people enjoy? What is it about spiritual realization that necessitates this solitary journey? Let me begin by saying that the spiritually chosen individual has a different relationship with reality than most people do. Most people experience life through a thick filter of concepts, beliefs, conditioning, and psychological needs. They see the world not as it is, but as their minds tell them it is. They live in a kind of trance, a consensus hallucination that we call normal consciousness. The chosen one, on the other hand, has somehow broken through this trance, perhaps through suffering, perhaps through grace, perhaps through years of spiritual practice, it doesn't matter how. What matters is that they now perceive reality more directly, with less mediation from the conceptual mind. And this creates an unbridgeable gap between them and those who are still living in the trance. Imagine trying to describe color to someone who has been blind from birth. You can use all the words you want, red, blue, green, but they will never truly understand what you're talking about because they lack the direct experience. In the same way, the spiritually awakened person has experiences, perceptions, understandings that simply cannot be communicated to those who haven't had them. And so they walk alone, not because they want to be superior or separate, but because there's literally no one who can fully understand what they're experiencing. Now, this aloneness begins even before full awakening. The moment someone starts to question the fundamental assumptions of their culture, their religion, their society, that moment, they step out of the crowd. They become dangerous because they're no longer predictable, no longer controllable through the usual means. The crowd senses this and begins to distance itself from them, or tries to pull them back into conformity. I remember speaking with a young man once who had been raised in a very strict religious tradition. He began to have doubts, to ask questions that his community considered heretical. And he said to me, "Alan, I feel like I'm dying. Everyone I've known my whole life is pulling away from me. My family looks at me like I'm a stranger. My friends don't know what to say to me anymore." And I told him, "Yes, you are dying. The person you were is dying. And that death is necessary for what you're becoming. But I won't lie to you, it's a lonely death because you must die alone." This is the first reason why the spiritually chosen walk alone. They're undergoing a transformation that others cannot follow them through. It's like the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly. The caterpillar must go into the chrysalis alone. No other caterpillar can accompany it. And during that time of transformation, it's neither caterpillar nor butterfly. It's in between, in a kind of liminal space that is profoundly isolating. But there's a deeper reason still. The spiritually chosen individual has discovered something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding, that the separate self, the ego, is an illusion. Now, this is not just an intellectual understanding. It's a direct perception, a lived reality. They have seen through the fiction of being a separate entity, isolated inside a bag of skin, cut off from the rest of existence. And once you've seen this, once you've realized that what you are is not this little ego, but the vast consciousness in which everything appears, you can't relate to people in the same way anymore. Most human relationships are based on two egos, interacting, negotiating, competing, cooperating. But if you no longer identify primarily as an ego, if you've seen through that whole game, then conventional relationship becomes very difficult. This doesn't mean the awakened person becomes cold or indifferent. Quite the opposite. They often become more loving, more compassionate, more present. But the basis of their relating is different. They're not relating ego to ego. They're relating from that deeper dimension, from consciousness itself, from what some traditions call the self with a capital S. And most people don't know how to meet someone at that level. They are so identified with their personality, their story, their psychological needs and fears, that they can only relate to others who are playing the same game. When they encounter someone who isn't playing, who has stepped out of the game while still appearing to be in it, they become confused, uncomfortable, sometimes hostile. The chosen one must walk alone, because they're operating from a different dimension of being than most people. It's as if everyone else is living on a flat plane, and they've discovered that there's a vertical dimension, a depth that most people are completely unaware of. They can still move on the horizontal plane with others, they can have conversations, do their work, participate in society, but their center of gravity is elsewhere in that vertical dimension that others cannot see. There's also the matter of values and priorities. The spiritually awakened person has seen through the goals that most people are pursuing. Wealth, status, security, pleasure, achievement, these things that drive most human behavior are recognized as empty, as incapable of providing the fulfillment that people seek from them. Not that the awakened person necessarily rejects these things or lives in poverty and isolation, but they're not fooled by them. They're not hypnotized by the carrot that society dangles in front of everyone. And when you're not chasing what everyone else is chasing, when you're not competing in the same race, when you're not measuring yourself by the same standards, you naturally find yourself alone. Because the whole structure of society, the whole mechanism of social interaction is built around these shared pursuits, these common goals. When you step out of that framework, you step out of the social world in a very fundamental way. I've observed this in my own life. I've known many people over the years, had many acquaintances, participated in many social circles, but there's always been a quality of aloneness, of not quite fitting in, of being present but somehow apart. Not because I'm trying to be special or different, but because I simply can't take seriously the things that others take seriously. The dramas that consume most people's attention, who's up and who's down, who said what about whom, which politician or celebrity is doing, what these things strike me as fundamentally unimportant, like children arguing over toys. Now, this might sound arrogant, as if I'm claiming to be above such concerns, but it's not arrogance, it's simply a different perspective, a different level of seeing. It's like an adult watching children play. The adult doesn't think they're better than the children, but they can't quite enter into the drama of the game with the same intensity because they've outgrown it. They see it for what it is, a game, a temporary amusement, not the ultimate reality that the children take it to be. The spiritually chosen person has outgrown the collective game that humanity plays, the game of separation, competition, accumulation, and achievement. And so they walk alone, not in bitterness or superiority, but simply because they're no longer playing. But here's something very important to understand. This aloneness is not isolation. The awakened person often feels more connected to existence, to nature, to the cosmos, to other beings at a deep level than they ever did when they were part of the crowd. The paradox is that in losing their sense of being a separate self, they discover that they're connected to everything. In walking alone, they find that they are never truly alone because they are the whole. There's a beautiful Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The external activities remain the same, but the internal experience is completely different. The awakened person still lives in the world, still interacts with others, still does what needs to be done, but they do it from a place of profound aloneness, which is simultaneously a place of complete unity. This is very difficult for most people to understand. They think of aloneness as loneliness, as isolation, as being cut off. But spiritual aloneness is something entirely different. It's a fullness, not an emptiness. It's the discovery that you are sufficient unto yourself because you are not really yourself, you are existence itself, expressing through this particular form. The chosen one walks alone because they have discovered that they were never really separate to begin with. The sense of needing others, of requiring companionship to be complete, arises from the illusion of being a separate entity. When that illusion dissolves, when you realize your fundamental unity with all that is, the desperate need for relationship dissolves too. Not that relationships disappear or become unimportant, but they're no longer driven by that anxious neediness, that fear of being alone that drives so much human behavior. And this changes the quality of relationship entirely. When you're complete in yourself, when your center is within you rather than in others' approval or companionship, you can meet others without agenda, without need, without the unconscious manipulation that characterizes most human interaction. You can love without attachment, engage without dependency, participate without losing yourself. But again, this is rare. Most people are incomplete in themselves, desperately seeking completion through others, through achievements, through acquisitions. And when they encounter someone who is complete, who isn't seeking anything, who isn't playing the game of neediness and fulfillment, they don't know what to do with them. Such a person is useless to the ego's project, and so the ego dismisses them, avoids them, or tries to normalize them, to pull them back into the game. The spiritually chosen person accepts this. They understand that they will walk alone, that they cannot force others to understand what they've realized, that they cannot drag anyone into the kingdom who isn't ready to enter. And so they walk their path, alone but not lonely, solitary but not isolated, apart but profoundly connected to all that is. There's also the matter of destiny, of calling. The chosen one has a work to do, a message to deliver, a function to fulfill that others cannot fulfill for them. This work often requires solitude, requires stepping away from the conventional world, requires a kind of dedication that doesn't allow for the normal comforts of social belonging. Think of the prophets in the wilderness, the monks in their caves, the philosophers in their solitary contemplations. These weren't people who chose isolation because they hated humanity. They chose it because they had something to discover, something to understand, something to bring back to humanity. And that discovery required aloneness, required silence, required stepping away from the noise and distraction of ordinary social life. The chosen one is often working on something, not necessarily a book or a teaching or a public work, but an internal work, a transformation, an understanding that requires all their attention, all their energy. And this work is incompatible with the demands of normal social life, with its expectations, its distractions, its constant call to return to the consensus reality. So they walk alone, following an inner compass that others cannot see, drawn by a call that others cannot hear, serving a purpose that others cannot understand. And they do this not because they want to be special or different, but because they have no choice. The call is too strong, the vision too clear, the work too important. And yet, paradoxically, this solitary work is for the benefit of all. The chosen one who walks alone is not abandoning humanity, they're serving it in the deepest way possible. By waking up, by seeing clearly, by breaking through the collective trance, they create a possibility for others. They demonstrate that another way of being is possible. They hold a space of consciousness that others can sense, can be drawn to, can perhaps eventually enter themselves. But they cannot do this work in the crowd. They cannot maintain that clarity, that depth, that connection to the source, while engaged in the endless trivia of social life. They must walk alone, must maintain their solitude, must guard their inner silence like a precious treasure, because that silence, that solitude, that aloneness, this is where the truth lives, where the real work happens, where consciousness deepens and clarifies. Now, I want to address something very important. Some people hear teachings like this and they use them to justify their social inadequacy, their inability to relate to others, their fear of intimacy. They say, "Oh, I'm spiritually advanced. That's why I'm alone. That's why no one understands me." But this is just spiritual ego, just another game the mind plays to avoid facing its own issues. True spiritual aloneness is not bitter. It's not resentful. It's not accompanied by a sense of superiority or by complaints about how stupid or unconscious everyone else is. True spiritual aloneness is peaceful, accepting, even joyful. The genuinely awakened person doesn't feel sorry for themselves. They don't wish things were different. They've accepted their path, embraced their solitude, made friends with their aloneness. So you must be very honest with yourself. Are you alone because you've outgrown the crowd, or because you're afraid of the crowd? Are you solitary because you're doing deep spiritual work, or because you're avoiding the challenges of relationship? Are you walking alone because you're following a genuine calling, or because you've given up on life? These are crucial questions, and only you can answer them honestly. The test is in your being. If you're genuinely on the path, if you're truly chosen in the sense I'm describing, there will be a quality of presence, of peace, of clarity about you. Others may not understand you, but they'll sense something real. Your aloneness will not diminish you, it will deepen you, strengthen you, make you more fully yourself. The spiritually chosen man walks alone because he must, because the path he's on is solitary by nature, because the truth he's discovered cannot be shared in ordinary language, because the work he's doing requires a depth of silence and solitude that social life makes impossible, because he's operating from a dimension that most people are unaware of, because he's following a call that others cannot hear. But in this aloneness, he discovers something extraordinary. He discovers that he is not separate from anything, that his aloneness is an illusion from one perspective and yet absolutely necessary from another, that he walks alone and yet is accompanied by all of existence, that he is solitary and yet never lonely, apart and yet profoundly connected, chosen and yet no different from anyone else who has the courage to wake up and see. This is the paradox, the mystery, the beautiful contradiction at the heart of spiritual life. You must walk alone to discover that you were never separate. You must leave the crowd to find that you are the crowd, that you are everyone and everything, that there is no other. You must become profoundly solitary to realize the deepest intimacy with all that is. And so the chosen one walks, alone but whole, solitary but complete, apart but united with all, following the pathless path that only he can walk, serving the truth that only he can serve in his particular way, being the light that only he can be, not because he's special, but because everyone is special, not because he's chosen above others, but because everyone is chosen who chooses to wake up, not because his path is better, but because it's his path, the one that existence has laid out for him, the one he must walk alone. You know, there's something rather peculiar that happens when you begin to wake up. And I don't mean waking up in the ordinary sense of opening your eyes after a good night's sleep. I'm talking about that other kind of awakening, the kind where you suddenly see through the elaborate game that everyone is playing, where the veil drops, and you realize that what you took to be solid reality is actually a magnificent dance of consciousness playing hide and seek with itself. And here's the thing that nobody tells you about this awakening. There's a truth that emerges, a truth so fundamental, so completely obvious once you see it, that you'd think everyone would want to know about it. But the great irony is that this truth must be kept hidden, not because it's dangerous in the conventional sense, but because the very act of revealing it too directly prevents others from discovering it themselves. You see, the truth is this: there is nothing you need to do to be what you already are. You are already it. The seeker is the sought. The observer is the observed. The wave is the ocean pretending for a moment to be separate so it can experience the thrill of returning home. Now, you might say, well, that's simple enough. Why not just tell everyone? And here we come to the great paradox. Because if I simply tell you that you're already enlightened, that there's nowhere to go and nothing to achieve, one of two things will happen. Either you'll reject it outright because it contradicts everything you've been taught about self-improvement and spiritual progress, or you'll accept it intellectually and turn it into just another concept to collect in your mental trophy case. The moment you make enlightenment into a destination, you've missed it entirely. It's like trying to catch your own shadow. The harder you chase it, the faster it runs away. But stop running, and there it is, always was, right beneath your feet. This is why the great teachers throughout history have been so maddeningly paradoxical in their teachings. They point at the moon, but insist you don't mistake the finger for the moon itself. They set up elaborate systems of practice, knowing full well that the practice itself will eventually have to be abandoned. They build you a boat to cross the river, but remind you not to carry the boat on your head once you've reached the other shore. The Buddha taught for 40 years, but at the end, he said he hadn't taught a single thing. Lao Tzu wrote that the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Jesus spoke in parables, because direct explanation would have missed the point entirely. These weren't being deliberately obscure for the fun of it. They understood something crucial. The truth cannot be given. It can only be discovered, and what makes this even more delicious is that you can't discover it by trying to discover it, because who is trying? The ego. And the ego is precisely the illusion that must be seen through. The ego is like a character in a dream trying to wake up the dreamer. It's a magnificent impossibility. So what happens when you truly wake up? You realize that you've been playing a cosmic game of hide and seek. God, the universe, consciousness, whatever word you prefer for that which is ultimately unnameable, has pretended to be you, to be separate, to be limited, to be mortal, and has done so with such conviction that it actually believes its own story. The character thinks it's real. The wave thinks it's separate from the ocean. And the awakening is simply the moment when God says, aha, found myself. The great search ends not because you found something new, but because you realized you were what you were looking for all along. The treasure is not at the end of the journey. You were sitting on it the entire time. Now, here's where we must be very careful indeed. Because when you see this, when you really see it, there's a tremendous temptation to go out and tell everyone, to grab people by the shoulders and shake them and say, don't you see, you're already it. Stop searching, stop trying, just be what you already are. But this almost never works. In fact, it usually has the opposite effect. People think you've gone mad, or worse, they turn your insight into a new belief system, a new religion, a new set of rules to follow. They take your spontaneous exclamation of recognition and turn it into dogma. They take your pointing finger and build a shrine around it, completely forgetting to look at what you were pointing at. This is what's happened throughout history. Jesus didn't come to start a religion. Buddha didn't intend to create Buddhism. They were simply expressing their own realization, pointing at what they saw. But the followers, not having the same realization, turned the pointing into an institution. They preserved the words but missed the music behind them. And so, those who truly awaken learn to keep quiet in a peculiar way. They don't necessarily become silent monks sitting in caves, though some do. Rather, they learn to speak in such a way that their words act as mirrors rather than maps. They create situations where others can discover the truth for themselves rather than trying to hand it to them directly. It's like teaching someone to ride a bicycle. You can explain the physics of balance and forward momentum all day long, but until they actually get on the bike and experience it themselves, they won't know how to ride. And interestingly, once they do know how to ride, they can't explain exactly how they do it. The knowledge is in their bones, not in their concepts. The awakened person learns to work with others where they are. If someone is deeply identified with their spiritual seeking, you don't tell them to stop seeking. Instead, you might encourage them to seek so thoroughly, so completely, that they eventually exhaust themselves and collapse into the realization that there was never anywhere to go. If someone is caught in the grip of trying to become a better person, you don't tell them self-improvement is a trap. You let them improve until they realize that the one trying to improve is the same one who thinks something is wrong in the first place. This is the art of skillful means, as the Buddhists call it. It's the ability to meet people where they are and give them exactly what they need to take the next step on their journey, knowing full well that all steps are ultimately steps in place, that the journey is really a staying put, that there is nowhere to go because there is nowhere that isn't here. And here's another layer to why this truth must be kept hidden, because the truth is alive, not static. It's not a formula or a fact that can be transmitted like a recipe for bread. Every person must discover it fresh in their own experience. It must be new each time, or it's not the real thing. It's like falling in love. Someone can tell you about love, can describe the feelings and the symptoms, but until you fall in love yourself, you don't really know what they're talking about. And when you do fall in love, your experience of it will be uniquely yours, even though love itself is universal. The truth we're talking about is like that. It's universal, yes. Everyone who awakens sees the same fundamental thing. But the way they see it, the context in which it arises, the particular flavor of their realization, all of this is unique to them. And this uniqueness cannot be captured in words or teachings. It must be lived. There's also a very practical reason why this truth must be kept hidden, and it has to do with the nature of society itself. Society, you see, is based on a collective agreement to take the game seriously. We agree to treat money as if it's real value. We agree to treat our roles and positions as if they define who we are. We agree to treat time as if it's passing and death as if it's an ending. Now, these agreements aren't necessarily bad. They're necessary for the game to function. You can't play chess if you refuse to follow the rules. You can't participate in the economy if you don't agree that money has value. The problem isn't the game itself. The problem is forgetting that it's a game. When you wake up, you see that it's a game. But you also realize that you're still playing it. You still need to eat. You still need shelter. You still interact with others who are taking the game very seriously. And so, you learn to play the game while knowing it's a game. You participate fully while remaining detached. You act as if things matter while knowing that ultimately nothing matters in the way we usually think it does. But imagine if everyone suddenly woke up simultaneously. If everyone stopped taking the game seriously all at once, society would collapse overnight. And while there might be something refreshing about that, it would also cause tremendous suffering and chaos. So the awakened person learns to be in the world but not of it, to use a Christian phrase. They play their role convincingly while waking inwardly that they're playing a role. This is what Christ meant when he said, "Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's." He wasn't advocating a separation between spiritual and worldly life. He was pointing at the ability to operate on two levels simultaneously, to participate in the conventional reality while remaining rooted in the ultimate reality. And this brings us to another reason for keeping quiet about your awakening: compassion. Real compassion, not the sentimental kind where you want everyone to feel good all the time, but the deep compassion that comes from recognizing yourself in everyone else. When you truly see that there is no separation, that you are everyone and everything, then you understand that everyone is on their own perfect path, even when they're suffering, even when they're confused, even when they're causing harm. This doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent, far from it, but it means you stop trying to force your realization onto others. You stop needing them to wake up so that you can feel validated in your own awakening. You allow them to be exactly where they are, knowing that where they are is exactly where they need to be for their own unfolding. You see, suffering isn't a mistake. Confusion isn't an error. They're part of the dance. The universe is exploring every possible experience of itself, including the experience of forgetting itself. And who are you to say that someone else's forgetting is wrong? Perhaps they need to forget more deeply before they can remember. Perhaps their particular path requires them to hit bottom before they can bounce back up. You don't know. You can't know. Each soul, each expression of consciousness has its own trajectory. So the awakened person becomes like water. Water doesn't argue with the obstacles in its path. It simply flows around them. It finds the lowest point and settles there without complaint. It reflects everything without judgment. It nourishes without discriminating between the worthy and unworthy. This is the way of operating from awakened consciousness. But here's something that might surprise you. Even after awakening, you're still human. You still have preferences. You still get hungry and tired. You still experience emotions. The difference is that you're no longer identified with these experiences as being who you fundamentally are. You watch them arise and pass away like weather patterns moving through the sky. The sky remains unchanged by the weather, yet it contains all weather. This is why awakened people can seem so ordinary. They haven't suddenly become perfect beings who never make mistakes or never feel anger or sadness. They've simply stopped believing in the solidity of these experiences. They've seen through the illusion of the separate self, but the human personality continues to operate. It's just that now there's space around it. There's a lightness, a sense of humor about the whole thing. And this ordinariness is itself a form of keeping the truth hidden. Because if enlightenment made you into some sort of superhuman who levitates and reads minds and never has a bad day, everyone would recognize it immediately. They'd put you on a pedestal and completely miss the point. But when the awakened person is just an ordinary person who happens to be free, they can move through the world without drawing too much attention to themselves. They can help others without creating a cult of personality around their teaching. Let me tell you something else about this hidden truth. It's not something you achieve once and for all. Oh, there may be sudden realizations, dramatic moments of seeing through the illusion. But the integration of that seeing into everyday life is a gradual process. It's like learning to see in a new way. At first, you might see clearly for a moment, then fall back into the old patterns. Then you see clearly for longer periods. Eventually, the new way of seeing becomes natural, becomes your default mode of operation. But even then, there are layers upon layers. You wake up from one dream only to find yourself in another dream. You see through one level of illusion only to discover another level beneath it. This isn't discouraging once you understand it. It's actually quite wonderful. It means the adventure never ends. There's always more depth to discover, always more of yourself to recognize, always more of the infinite to experience. And here's something crucial. You can't use your awakening as a way to avoid being human. Some people have a realization and then try to use it as spiritual bypass, as a way to avoid dealing with their psychological issues or their responsibilities or their relationships. They say, well, nothing really matters, so why should I care about anything? But this is just another form of ego, another way of maintaining separation. True awakening includes everything. It doesn't reject the human dimension. It embraces it fully while seeing through it simultaneously. You become more fully human, not less. Your emotions become more vivid, not less, because you're no longer protecting yourself from them. Your relationships become more authentic because you're no longer maintaining a false image of yourself. Your life becomes more engaged, not more detached, because you're no longer afraid of losing something you never really had. So when I say the truth must be kept hidden, I don't mean you should lie about it or deny it. I mean you should embody it rather than proclaim it. Live it rather than preach it. Be it rather than talk about it. Let your presence do the teaching rather than your words. Because presence can't be faked. You can fake knowledge, you can fake wisdom, you can even fake compassion, but you can't fake presence. When someone has truly awakened, there's a quality about them that others recognize, even if they can't name it. People are drawn to this quality. They feel safe around it. They feel seen and accepted in a way they rarely experience elsewhere. And in that safety and acceptance, they naturally begin to question their own assumptions, to examine their own beliefs, to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there's another way of being that they haven't considered. This is how real transmission happens, not through words and concepts, but through this direct recognition of being, meeting being. The teacher doesn't give the student anything. Rather, the teacher's presence reminds the student of what they already are. It's like two tuning forks. One is vibrating at a certain frequency, and gradually the other begins to vibrate at the same frequency through resonance. And sometimes the awakened person doesn't even need to be present physically. Sometimes just the memory of them, or a story about them, or a teaching they left behind can trigger this resonance in someone who's ready. The Buddha has been dead for thousands of years, but people still wake up by contemplating his teachings. The form doesn't matter. What matters is whether the recipient is ready to hear. And readiness can't be forced. You can't make someone ready before their time. All you can do is plant seeds and trust that they'll sprout when conditions are right. Sometimes you plant a seed and walk away, never knowing that years later it grew into a mighty tree. Sometimes you plant 1,000 seeds and nothing seems to happen. But you plant them anyway, not for the results, but because planting seeds is your nature, just as bearing fruit is the nature of a tree. Now, I want to address something that might be puzzling you. You might be thinking, but Alan, you're giving lectures, you're writing books, you're talking about all of this. Aren't you violating your own principle about keeping the truth hidden? And that's a fair question. But you see, I'm not trying to give you the truth. I'm trying to give you permission to discover it yourself. I'm trying to show you that it's okay to question everything you've been taught. That it's okay to look directly at your own experience rather than accepting second-hand reports about reality. That it's okay to be what you are rather than trying to become what you think you should be. I'm speaking in circles and paradoxes deliberately. I'm contradicting myself intentionally. I'm setting up ideas and then knocking them down. Why? Because I want to frustrate your conceptual mind. I want to show you that the truth can't be captured in concepts. Every time you think you've grasped what I'm saying, I pull the rug out from under you. And eventually, if you stay with it long enough, you stop trying to grasp and you simply listen. You listen not with your mind, but with your whole being. And in that listening, something else can happen. This is the art of teaching without teaching. The pointing without pointing. The saying without saying. It's been used by Zen masters for centuries. They give you a koan, an unsolvable puzzle, not because they want you to solve it, but because they want you to exhaust your rational mind trying. And when the rational mind finally gives up, when it admits defeat, there's a gap. And in that gap, reality can shine through. But even this explanation is too much. Even telling you that I'm using this technique defeats the purpose of it. So forget everything I just said. Or better yet, don't forget it and don't remember it. Just let it be what it is, whatever that is. You know, there's a Zen story about a monk who came to a master and said, "I've heard that you know the secret of enlightenment. Please teach it to me." And the master said, "Have some tea." He poured tea into the monk's cup, and he kept pouring even after the cup was full, until the tea was spilling all over the floor. And the monk said, "Master, the cup is full. No more will go in." And the master said, "Yes. And like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I teach you anything unless you first empty your cup?" But here's the twist that most people miss when they hear this story. The emptying of the cup is not the end goal, because an empty cup is just as useless as a full cup. An empty mind is just as trapped as a full mind. What you want is not emptiness or fullness, but the freedom to be empty when emptiness is appropriate, and full when fullness is appropriate. You want to be able to hold concepts lightly, to use them as tools rather than being used by them. This is what it means to be awakened. You are free. Not free from life, but free within life. Not free from thinking, but free from believing your thoughts. Not free from emotions, but free from being controlled by them. You can still play all the games, but you're no longer fooled by them. You can still wear all the masks, but you know there's no face underneath. You can still tell the story of your life, but you know it's just a story, and you're equally the storyteller, the story, and the blank page it's written on. And the greatest joke of all is this. Once you realize there's nowhere to go and nothing to achieve, you're finally free to go anywhere and achieve anything. Once you realize you're already complete, you're free to become whatever you want. Once you realize nothing really matters, everything becomes infinitely precious. The liberation from the game gives you the freedom to really play it for the first time. But again, if I tell you this, you'll just add it to your collection of spiritual concepts. You'll say, yes, I understand nothing matters, so everything matters. I get it. But you don't get it. How could you? Understanding is of the mind, and what we're talking about is beyond mind, not opposed to mind, but beyond it, including it, but not limited to it. So what am I really doing here today? I'm inviting you to look not at my words, but at what my words are pointing toward. I'm inviting you to examine your own direct experience rather than your beliefs about experience. I'm inviting you to question the questioner, to observe the observer, to witness the witness. And if you do this sincerely, if you really look, you might discover something remarkable. You might discover that there's no one there doing the looking. There's just looking happening. There's no experiencer separate from experience. There's just experiencing occurring. And in that moment of recognition, everything shifts. Not because anything changed, but because you stopped pretending that things were other than they are. This is the truth that must be kept hidden. Not hidden away in some secret vault, but hidden in plain sight. Hidden in the most obvious place imaginable, which is precisely why no one looks there. Hidden in this very moment, in this very experience, in this very breath. Hidden as you, not hidden from you. And the reason it must be kept hidden is that the very seeking of it is what prevents its discovery. The great search is the great obstacle. The pursuit of enlightenment is what keeps enlightenment at bay. The desire for awakening is the dream from which you need to awaken. So, if you really want to find this truth, stop looking for it. Not because you've given up, but because you've realized there's nowhere else to look. You are already standing at the center of everything. You are already it. You were never not it. You can't become what you already are. You can only stop pretending to be something you're not. And when you stop pretending, when you drop the mask, when you let yourself be what you've always been underneath all the layers of conditioning and belief, then you'll understand why this truth must be kept hidden. Because it's not really hidden at all. It's just that everyone is looking everywhere except where they are. They're searching the whole world for what they already possess. They're trying to become what they've never stopped being. So the awakened person simply stops pretending. They stop pretending to be separate. They stop pretending to be limited. They stop pretending to know. They stop pretending to not know. They simply are what they are, which is what everything is, which is this eternal presence that's looking out of every eye, that's aware of every thought, that's living every life. And in that simplicity, in that ordinariness, in that utter normalness, lies the greatest mystery and the deepest truth. Not hidden, yet invisible. Not secret, yet unknown. Not distant, yet unreachable by any movement. Here, now, always, as you, as everything, as nothing, as the question and the answer and the space between them. This is what cannot be taught but must be discovered. This is what cannot be given but must be recognized. This is what cannot be spoken but must be lived. And so, the awakened ones walk among you, keeping their secret in plain sight, waiting for you to remember what you already know, to see what you've never stopped seeing, to be what you've never stopped being. Wake up. But don't try to wake up. You can't wake up because you're not really asleep. You're just pretending to be, so convincingly that you fool yourself. So stop pretending, or don't. It doesn't really matter either way. Both the dreaming and the waking are part of the same infinite play. And that, my friends, is the truth that must be kept hidden. Hidden from those who seek it as something separate from themselves. Hidden from those who would turn it into another belief, another system, another path. But revealed, always revealed, to those who simply stop and look at what's actually here, to those who drop their assumptions and meet reality as it is, to those who have the courage to be what they already are without apology or explanation. The secret is you, the truth is you, the teacher is you, the teaching is you, everything else is commentary. Now, shall we have some tea?
I do like
You know,
Alan.
there's something quite peculiar that happens when a person begins to wake up spiritually. And by waking up, I don't mean having some grand mystical experience or achieving enlightenment in the way people often imagine it, as if you suddenly become bathed in golden light and all your problems disappear. No, what I'm talking about is something far more subtle, and in many ways far more troubling. I'm talking about the moment when you begin to see through the game, when the veil starts to lift, when you recognize that so much of what you've been told is real and important is actually nothing more than an elaborate fiction. And here's what nobody warns you about. Once you see through it, you can't unsee it. There are things you lose in this process of awakening that you can never get back. Not because they've been taken from you, but because they simply dissolve once you recognize them for what they always were. Illusions, games, agreed upon fantasies that only work as long as everyone pretends they're real. The first thing you lose, and perhaps the most disorienting, is your ability to take the social game seriously. Now, I don't mean you become rude or inconsiderate. What I mean is that you can no longer participate in the theater of social posturing with the same earnest investment you once had. You see people maneuvering for status, competing for recognition, carefully constructing their images, and you can see right through it. You see it as a kind of dance, a ritual that everyone has agreed to perform, and the spell is broken. Before awakening, you were probably a willing participant in this dance. You cared about your reputation, your social standing, what people thought of you. You played the game because everyone else was playing it, and it seemed like the most natural thing in the world. But once you wake up, you see the game as a game. And here's the thing about games. Once you recognize them as games, they lose their power over you. You might still play, but you're no longer fooled into thinking the game is reality itself. I remember watching people at social gatherings after I had begun to see through this particular illusion. The conversations about who had achieved what, who knew whom, who had been recognized or promoted or honored, all of it appeared to me like children playing at being grown-ups, taking their make-believe terribly seriously. And I don't say this with any sense of superiority, mind you. I'm not suggesting I was better than these people. I'm simply describing what happens when you see through the game. You lose your ability to
The
care
worm will
about
be
it
here
in
in
the
a
way you
moment.
once did. And this loss has consequences. Your old friends may find you strange now. They sense that you're not playing by the same rules anymore, that you're not impressed by the things that impress them, that you don't share their concerns about status and position. They may accuse you of having changed, of having become aloof or arrogant, but you haven't become arrogant. You've simply stopped pretending that the emperor is wearing clothes when you can clearly see he's naked. The second thing you lose is your innocence about human motivation. Before awakening, you probably took people at face value. When someone said something, you generally believed they meant it. When someone acted friendly, you assumed they were friendly. When someone claimed to believe in something, you thought they actually believed it. But as you wake up, you
Looks
begin
like
to
they're
see the
leaving.
layers beneath the surface. You see how much of what people say and do is driven by fear, by the desperate need for approval, by unconscious patterns they're completely unaware of. You start to notice the gap between what people claim to value and how they actually behave. You see someone speak eloquently about compassion and kindness, and then you watch them treat a waiter with contempt. You hear people declare their commitment to truth and honesty, and then you observe them lying to themselves with every breath. You notice how people construct elaborate justifications for doing exactly what they wanted to do anyway. This seeing is not comfortable. In fact, it can be quite painful, because you also start to see these patterns in yourself. You recognize how much of your own behavior has been driven by unconscious fear and need. You catch yourself in the act of self-deception. You notice how often your noble-sounding reasons for doing things are really just cover stories for much more basic drives. The desire to be liked, to feel safe, to avoid discomfort. Once you've seen this, you can't unsee it. And this means you lose a certain kind of trust in human nature, or perhaps more accurately, a certain naivety about it. You become, in a sense, impossible to fool. Not because you've become cynical. Cynicism is just another form of belief, after all, but because you've developed a kind of X-ray vision for pretense and self-deception. The third thing you lose, and this is perhaps the most profound, is your belief in the continuity and solidity of your own self. Before awakening, you probably experienced yourself as a continuous entity moving through time, the same person you were yesterday, the same person you'll be tomorrow, with a consistent set of characteristics, preferences, and qualities that define who you are. But as you begin to wake up, this sense of a solid, continuous self starts to dissolve. You notice that what you call yourself is really just a collection of thoughts, memories, sensations, and patterns that are constantly changing. You catch yourself being different people in different situations, not because you're being false, but because there is no fixed person to be true to. The self you thought was so real and permanent turns out to be more like a river than a rock, always flowing, never the same from one moment to the next. This is extraordinarily disorienting, because if there's no solid self, then who is living your life? Who is making your decisions? Who is experiencing your experiences? The mind rebels against this recognition. It desperately wants to believe in the reality of the self, because without that belief, everything becomes uncertain. If there's no solid me, then what's the point of anything? Why should I care about what happens to this body and mind if there's no real person here anyway? But here's what's interesting. Once you lose your belief in the solid self, you can't get it back, even if you want to. You might try to convince yourself that you're a real, solid person again, but you've seen through it. You know it's just another story, another convenient fiction. And this knowing changes
Welcome
everything.
back.
Because so much of human suffering is based on the desperate
We're listening
attempt
to
to
some
protect
Alan
and
Watts.
promote a self that doesn't actually exist in the way we think it does. The fourth thing you lose is your ability to believe in the ultimate importance of your own story. Every human being constructs a narrative about their life, where they came from, what happened to them, what it all means, where they're going. This narrative gives life a sense of coherence and purpose. It turns the random events of existence into a meaningful story with heroes and villains, triumphs and tragedies, lessons learned and wisdom gained. Before awakening, your story was probably very important to you. It defined you. It explained you. It justified you. When people asked who you were, you told them your story. When you thought about yourself, you rehearsed your story. The story gave meaning to your suffering and significance to your achievements. But as you wake up, you begin to see your story as just that, a story, a narrative constructed after the fact to make sense of what happened. And you realize that you could tell the same events in a completely different way and create an entirely different story. The facts remain the same, but the meaning changes depending on how you frame them. What you once saw as your greatest triumph might be reinterpreted as your greatest folly. What you thought was your deepest wound might be seen as your greatest teacher. Once you recognize that your story is just one possible interpretation of your life, not the truth of your life, you can't quite believe in it the same way anymore. It becomes more like a costume you wear than an expression of who you really are. And this means you lose the comfort and security that comes from having a solid identity rooted in a coherent narrative. You become, in a sense, storyless. Not because you stop telling stories about yourself, but because you know they're just stories. The fifth thing you lose is your ability to derive your sense of meaning and purpose from external goals and achievements. Before awakening, you probably organized your life around achieving things, getting an education, building a career, finding a partner, raising children, accumulating wealth or possessions or experiences. These goals gave your life direction and purpose. They provided a reason to get up in the morning, a way to measure your progress, a basis for feeling that your life was meaningful. But as you wake up, you begin to see through the logic of achievement. You recognize that every achievement is temporary, that everything you build will eventually crumble, that all your accomplishments will be forgotten. You see that the satisfaction of achievement is always fleeting. The moment you achieve something, your mind is already reaching for the next goal, never satisfied, never complete. More than that, you begin to question the whole framework of becoming, of trying to get somewhere other than where you are. You recognize that all this striving is based on the assumption that you're not enough as you are, that life is not enough as it is, that something is missing or wrong that needs to be fixed or achieved or acquired. And this assumption, you realize, is the source of tremendous suffering. Once you see this, you can't quite throw yourself into the pursuit of goals with the same wholehearted conviction you once had. You might still work, still create, still build things, but there's a different quality to it. You're not doing it to become someone, or to prove something, or to fill a lack. You're doing it because it's the natural expression of the moment, not because you believe it will finally make you complete. The sixth thing you lose is your fear of what others think of you in the old paralyzing way. Now, you don't lose all concern for others' opinions. That would be sociopathic. What you lose is the desperate, unconscious need for approval that governs so much of your behavior before awakening. You lose the automatic assumption that others' judgments of you are somehow more real or true than your own experience of yourself.
So spice gathering with a harvester is simply more efficient. The spice you gather is exactly the same as compacted sand, but in at a much greater rate. You can also process a lot more stacks. So when we get back to base, you'll see we've got 2 large refiners that, once we started activating on Tuesday, have actually not stopped running the entire time. We've been feeding them constantly. So when you get 100% of a field, it's just the same as getting 1%, and nothing changes particularly. In fact, yesterday I cleaned out one of the craters, and it took several hours before another one appeared. Hopefully that won't happen again today. But the spice is the same. However much you take or leave of a field doesn't really matter. But thank you for asking. Hope that answers your question. And back to Alan Watts. I just realized I misread your question. The amount of spice in a location is fixed. The only thing that changes is how quickly you can gather it. So if you use a Mark 6 compactor, you gather more of the sand at once. If you use a sand crawler, you gather more sand faster than you would with a Mark 6 compactor. But the amount of sand in each patch remains the same. So a large crater contains 250,000, and it doesn't matter how you collect it, it will always contain that amount. That's my understanding, at least. My pleasure. Hope the meeting goes well. I suspect that's not the end of our playlist. Oh, maybe it is. Huh. Bummer. I guess I'll have to try and be entertaining. So let me put the music back on, first of all. We're gonna finish off this tank of spice for sure. And then perhaps over to the bazaar, we'll see. See how many hours we have stacked up in the refiner after this. I really enjoy listening to Alan. He's what is everywhere now, I guess. A very interesting individual. I don't agree with all of his philosophies, but, and I don't agree with some of his use of language, although a lot of this was kind of 70s, so language does evolve. But I also think that although I can be a very pedantic person and argue semantics and that the use of language is incredibly important in order to be understood, I strangely don't get hung up on semantics when I understand the sentiment behind something and hold it to be true, which is an interesting observation about myself. I am all for self-understanding and changing, and like the one thing guaranteed in life is change. Assuming that we are ascribing to a linear time. But hey, we're getting a little deep. And we are moving over to the bazaar at some point, which is going to be very superficial, but I like it. How are we doing for stuff? Oh, look, we're doing pretty good, actually. Oh, I forgot to start the timer. There we go. Okie dokie. I think at some point I want to try and do a by sand drawing, even though my artistic ability is not the greatest. But I kind of like the idea of trying to like draw yin and yang on the sand. Hugely inefficient, terrible waste of spice, but you'll see when we get back to base we are doing okay for spice this week. Let's see. Yeah, up to 8k. 3.1 to go. So just over 2/3. We are going to need to repair up the tank, probably on this rotation. And we've got the spare back in the forward operating base out here, so that we can continue without too much trouble. As I say, the last little bit of durability seems to last for a phenomenally long time. Let's head over here. Gonna kind of leave a lot of this like edge bits. Last time I picked it so clean it was almost impossible to tell if this was the current crater that was still up, and I'd kind of like to avoid that. Pretty soon we're going to be out here sand crawling and getting your module is about to be destroyed message very often. Okay, we're almost at the reset point. So 3 minutes on the sand, approximately. Let's get closer to our carrier before we try and repair. This might call the worm. Why is that not repairing? There we go. So that's another curious bug. Sometimes your repair torch will clearly be operating. You'll be losing repair wire, but it doesn't repair at all, which is just something to be aware of. Let's see if anything's incoming. Quite often, by going up to a decent altitude and coming off the sand every 3 minutes, you can avoid any worm presence at all. And as you've seen, sometimes it just means avoiding the direct aggression breach. Let's see. Anyone coming? I think we might be right. Just give it a couple more seconds. Looking good, looking good. Okie dokie. Back down we go. Whoop. Quite satisfying sucking up all the sand. On one level, I find it quite cathartic. On another level, like it's essentially cleaning, right? This is virtual cleaning. But hey, I am coming to the conclusion that questioning things you enjoy too deeply may actually take something away from them. It's good to understand what it is you like and why you like it, and that those things probably are going to change over time. But kind of simplifying and quantifying things can end up distilling it down to an essence which changes your viewpoint of it, for better or worse. How are we looking? What do we reckon? 8K? Hey, almost 9. Nice surprise. So I think we probably wouldn't have another full tank out. Well, who am I kidding? There probably is another full tank of spice out here, but I think we can be happy with 2 tanks solo, especially with this kind of Regis extra big one. Fits more spice in by, I think, 50%. It's quite a lot anyway. I didn't start the timer because I am a dingus brain. So what I think we'll do is we'll see if we can get away with this edge here. Just hem this in a little bit. And then we'll reset the aggro. How are we looking? 10k? No. I might well dig out some more Alan Watts for another stream. I'm pleasantly surprised with the amount of his work that is readily available that I still haven't consumed yet. Right, let's not push the luck and go up and do another reset. It's probably a little early, but that's okay too. This might mean we end up with an awkward moment where we end up with a patrolling worm while we're on the sand, but with a bit of luck and a prevailing wind, we'll be alright. Ah, I saw him. That was pretty good timing, I guess. So I think 2 more kind of touchdowns and we'll probably be there or thereabouts. Gonna be leaving some interesting shapes in the sand, but hey, that's okay too. I think I'm going to do a super inefficient run this time where I kind of clear up some of the smaller blobby bits. Would you care to swing a right, Shai-Hulud? It's going straight, and still going straight. It's kind of arcing around. I think we'll be fine, but it would be a shame to lose what we've already gathered. Let's see if we can. See if we can sneak in another little. Yep, I think we'll be fine. Another little go around. Boop. I'll actually remember the time. Whoa, that was a little closer than I was expecting. I think we're stood right on it. Yeah, of course we are. So there are like small marks in the sand which look like spice, but I don't think you can pick them up with a vacuum. Which is a little bit frustrating. It'd be nice to make it super clean. Okay. Little Muad'Dib. Okay. Looks pick upable. $9K. Whoops. 9.6. Great. As I've mentioned before, generally speaking, the color of the sand represents the density, but I have definitely had occasions where extremely pale sand have yielded very high amounts, especially while compacting. My stomach has been making lots of silly noises the last few days. I think I need to be a lot more mindful about what I put into it. I don't know if it's grumbling about not having enough or what I'm putting into it. These kind of streaks left behind by the last sandcrawler group that were choosing to do it in streaks rather than circles, which I prefer. We've kind of almost eliminated all those streaks too, which was quite satisfying. We need to reset in a moment. Turn off the alarm. And we'll head back over to the boat. I'm a boat, I'm a boat. Oh, I totally missed some of that back there. Never mind. Perfect in its imperfectness. Hop up and away. So I think we will, like, tidy up these streaky bits. Grab this. Grab those bits. And let's see if we're getting a visit this time. Yep, there he is, right on cue. Alright, alright, alright. Are we going to get the double patrol? I should probably try and pay more attention to when we get a random kind of pass through twice. Because we don't often get them. But when you do, they're kind of terrifying, even if they're not aggroed onto you. Let us see. Swinging round. Is he going to cut through the crater again? I don't think so. But that is also still rather close patrol-wise. Me want to hit the sand. Away you go. Okay. That looks fine. Oh, our treads are looking kind of damaged. How actually are they? Yeah, they are pretty damaged. Should be enough for this run, though. What's the tank at? 24. It's fine. Well, I say fine. It's extremely low, but it's good enough. Like, we would not want to come under fire. It would probably pop open with, like, a couple of hits, but I think we'll be alright. I hope we will. Oops. see, let's do this pass through and then see if we're up to 10k or not. Grab that. Little wisp. So like these marks here, is this actually spice or is it just kind of weird shadow? I think it's just weird shadow. But that part there, I think that is spice sand, so it's not always easy to tell. Oh, hello. Really? My dude. Okay, we need to get back to our sand crawler, because carrier, because that is going to call a worm very quickly. Not that. How much have we got here? Almost full. Let's just wait for him to call a worm. Won't take very long. Not with all that compacting, and we're due one in any second now anyway. So we'll just wait. Just be a little bit more cautious. We only need like about 1,000 more. Where is the worm? Okay, let's see if we can sneak a little bit more in. This guy doesn't seem to be going too spammy with the compacting, so that's good. Oh, that was not good. Very nervous whilst sand crawling if there's someone compacting at the same time. He done, or did he spot something? He's done. Great. We are a little over 1,000 away. And I didn't start the timer again, because I am dingus brained. But I think if we just head back towards the carrier, as long as we're nearby, like we can beat most of the current kind of worm aggro patterns. They tend to breach a little bit further out, although we are on the outskirts, which makes it more dangerous. But you get a reasonable amount of time to get what you need, get into the carrier, and get the sand crawler off the sand. I'm going to wing it a little bit here. I think once I've done this patch, we'll probably take off to do a reset. How we look at? Oh, we're so close. You know what? I'm going to risk it for the biscuit. Well, just pick this up going backwards. We are seeing some worm a little bit further away as well, which is good because I think that there is a proximity lock to how much, to how often worms can breach. Just a little patch there. I mean, this is to be like, yes, 49 sand. Okay. 41. You know what we'll do? We'll head over to where that guy was compacting and just neaten the sand up over there. No particular reason. I think probably these two look almost triangle shaped ones will probably constitute enough to fill us up. Yep, there we go. We is full. Blinking red light indicates a full spice container. I don't know whether that scout's going to be back, but there's still plenty of spice there. Easily obtainable. So what did we do? We put on 3 refines on the eastern one, and no, 4 on the eastern, 3 on the western refinery. So we'll do it the other way around this time. Kaboom! These spice blows do look very pretty. Pretty clouds. Pretty and dangerous if you happen to be too close when they go off. So we're going to get this spice on, rotate the bodies if they need it, which they probably will. And then we're going to Monty Python. We're going to, now for something completely different, and hop to the bazaar. Just because I haven't played it in quite a while. I'm sure there have been multiple changes, but we'll probably take out... well, let's see. There are 5 characters, but we have access to 4 of them. There is Vanessa, who was the first one. There is Pygmalion. There is Dooley. There is... Oof. I've already forgotten what the other guy is. What's his name? One that does poisons. Him and Estelle. Stell is a DLC character that I haven't picked up yet. The other ones I enjoyed very much in the kind of early access thing. Dooley's the last one. That's... Oh, wait a minute. So there's Stell, Pygmalion, Dooley. I can't believe I've forgotten his name. He's the guy I play the least, though. Ah, well, we'll find out in about 10 or 15. I will take a short break after we've put the spice on to make myself another cuppa. and consult with my stomach and see if it actually needs anything. I suspect it doesn't. It's just grumbling for the sake of it. And down we go. You can go there. You can go here. Thunk, thunk, crunch, crunch. Come on. You can do it. Be a good sky potato. There we go. Okay, so let me get the sandcrawler in so that I don't need to think too much about the safety of that. Get it in and repaired. God, those treads really are taking some wear, which is good. Like, it just goes to show how much we have harvested. The whole point is to turn the durability of this vehicle into spice melange. Great. And this is probably not the best way to get around here. Oh, that'll work though. Yeah. And we will sandcrawler. Whoops. There we go. Fill that one up. Fill this one up. Why are you not going in? It's weird. Weird game things. 4 in here. Transfer this back into here. Oh. Helps if I put it in the box. Sandcrawler. Yep. And yep. Great. 4 in here. So our queue is currently 8 hours there. I imagine it's 8 or possibly even more on the other one. I went too far. Sign of a big base when you lose where it is. That's got 12? Oh, okay. I definitely loaded too much in this one then. That's okay though. We can rebalance that later. Did the bodies finish? They did. So we will restock those too. Don't think we actually need to do this fully. Let me just take a look. How much water do we actually have capacity? You got 800,000. You know what? We'll just do like 4 more. I don't think there's any great need to do more than that. We've also got 10 wind traps working away, so we might as well let them do their thing. How much? Excuse me. How much spice is left for another stack here? Oh wait a minute, that's 11. Okay, so we're only 2,000 into the other one, which is fine. Let's repair up the carrier. Shouldn't take much. Okay. Well, that was very successful. Let's repair our welding torch. Repair the repair thing. As you do. Okay. Sure. And if we just turn this into 7. Go on the floor. Steal a couple more fuel cells before the guys get online later. Okay. That was excellent. What we're going to do is I'm going to take a short AFK, get myself coffee, and then we're going to stop over to the bazaar. So for those of you that were just here for the duning, thank you very much for joining. I do appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed your time and your day's going well. For those of you that are staying for the bazaar, if you don't know what it is a auto battler deck building game. So it's basically a card game. It's a whole thing, and it's fun. So I haven't played it in a while, but we'll give it a red hot crack. So I will be back very shortly. Let's play some Bazaar. Oh, that's not how you spell it. Let me change the game. Is it the Bazaar? Yeah. Strategy board game. Check my tags. Backseatings allowed. Oh, it's Bazaar, not Bizarre. Whoops. Haha. It's live with the Bazaar. Okay. I may have to do some faffing around with our actual cards, like how it looks and stuff. Right. Back very shortly.
Climb out a hill just to wish you will. Fall at your feet, ready for my final sleep. Then the shadows stir deep down inside, but love shines through, nowhere it can hide. When I hear your voice and my blood runs fast, this tired heart beats on so that love can last. Feels like the darkness wins nearly every fight. Hold on to dreams until the morning light. So many demons to slay, I fear I cannot stay. With love's warming glow, it's back to war I go. When I hear your voice and my blood runs fast, this tired heart beats on so that love can last. We return to the start, when the night was all ours, making love look like art until we return to the stars. When I hear your voice and my blood runs fast, this tired heart beats on so that love can last. Even when I hear your name and my blood runs fast, this tired heart beats the same so that this love can last. climb out a hill just to wish you will. Fall at your feet, ready for my final sleep. Then the shadows stir deep down inside, but love shines through, nowhere it can hide. When I hear your voice and my blood runs fast, this tired heart beats on so that love can last. Feels like the darkness wins nearly every fight. Hold on to dreams until the morning light. So many demons to slay, I fear I cannot stay. With love's warming glow, it's back to war I go. When I hear your voice and my blood runs fast, this tired heart beats on so that love can last. We return to the start, when the night was all ours, making love look like art until we return to the stars. When I hear your voice and my blood runs fast, this tired heart beats on so that love can last. Even when I hear.
Okay, we are back, but I do have to fiddle around with my overlay. Let me see, if we go to this, is this gonna work okay for... let's see, this one? I doubt it will. Let me see. Why would you need that? And what if I... Sorry, I'm just tweaking some settings. Windowed mode. But like full screen. Does it like it now? Real-time editing, folks. Sure you understand. The Bazaar may require OBS to run in as admin. Huh. That's kind of like looking like it does, but let's try window capture. Create new Bazaar. Try this one. Oh, that kind of works. No, that's doing everything. Capture specific window, the Bazaar. This is definitely not the Bazaar though, right? Derp derp derp. Yeah, okay. Remove. Yes. Let's try. Oh no, application audio. Game capture. Let's try the Bazaar. Okay. Specific window. Bazaar. Okay, it really doesn't like that. So we're actually going to have to stop the stream here and come back in whilst I do some tweaking. So I should be right back with the Bazaar. Cheers all.